Okie dokie, the recording has started. That is excellent. What I wanted to do, if it's okay with you guys, is do a recap of last week. I'm I I don't know. It's most likely due to user error, but I was getting I was feeling a little lonely because nobody was emailing me or anything. And then this morning I turned on my computer and suddenly there were a bunch of emails from people in the class. So I think that my settings, I am going to have to go back in and double check my settings and make sure that all my browsers are up to date and if you guys emailed me and I didn't get back to you until today, that's why I didn't see it. Because what I have it set on is that when you guys email me, it is supposed to tell me through Canvas, and then it's also supposed to go to my UVU email account, and then it's supposed to go to one of my Gmail accounts. So I'm supposed to get it from 3 directions, and nothing was showing up until this morning. That's kind of weird. Anyway, we are recording. And if it's all right with you, I wanted to go back over some of the stuff that we talked about last week. And if anybody, because I did not get emails until this morning, if anybody's um, behind or anything like that, don't worry about it. If we need to, we'll extend the data week. But we did get a couple submissions of the Structure with Skin project, and I got several emails that people were not able to see the image on Canvas that's posted, which I don't understand because I took a screenshot of my view and I emailed that out to everybody. And I wanted to show that again and then talk about it. And I am just setting things up a little bit here. There were a couple other things that I wanted to mention. We do have, today is a red letter day because Allison sent in the first critique video, and we're going to watch that. What is nice, it's always a good surprise, is that she did a really good job too. Sometimes the first one, I will just play it and you'll see it the first time I see it. And I've learned in the past that's not always the smartest thing to do. But thankfully, Allison did a really good job. So we're gonna watch that in just a second here. And then the other thing is several people have turned in things after I've done my comments and stuff explaining why points are missing. Like with the annotated bibliography, uh, what was really nice is that several people looked at what I wrote and then turned them in, and now they have really good scores. So that's really important. And if I'm not responding when something's been turned in, um, again, email me and let me know. Because I'm when I go through, I will see the resubmissions and then I'm able to change the grade. One thing that did concern me a little bit is a few people in the work logs, each of the modules have a work log section. And that's just an opportunity for you to turn in the hours for that module. And each of the modules have their own work logs. And the only thing that you get points for turning in is the work log for that module. And I wanted to, and I know that I've gone over this a couple times, but there's a couple of people that are just turning in all of their hours, and then also a couple of people that are just turning in hours for incorrect assignments, which doesn't help. So I wanted to show this really quick. Module 1, if we go to that, we'll see down at the bottom, it says Work Log Module 1, Sculpture-Based Photography. When you submit that, that is for the work that you did on everything for this module. Watching the introduction, reading the introduction, reading in the book for your quiz, taking the quiz, looking at all the artists for the background, writing your artist review paper, reading this section, and working on your the project, and then taking part in the discussion. So that work log is all of this activity for this, including the reading and everything else. And then module 7A, the work log for this, again, is only for the activity you did in module 7A, which is that early research stuff where you go through the artist list and do all that. That's important because a couple people have been confused about that. And again, when you turn in the work log is only for that assignment. You know, like this module. So I'm sorry, not assignment, for the module. And it's for all the work in that module. The work that you've done for defining volumetric form with line is going to be different than the work that you did on the artist research or service learning module. Does that make sense to everybody? I hope so, because a couple people have been confused about that, and I wanted to clarify that and make sure everybody understood. A couple people have submitted all their work logs and are just adding it to the document and just turning in a new document with all the previous work logs, and that's getting confusing. And so I'm not going to be giving points to that. You have to separate it out. And I should also make sure that everybody knows it needs to be typed, not handwritten. So I hope that's clear for everybody as well. And and when you look at the modules, the module descriptions, it will give you kind of a rough guideline for how long it might take. And for the activity modules, modules 1, 2, 3 so far, the average for the class has been about 11 to 13 hours for each of those. That's including the project, watching all the stuff for the artists and everything like that. So if you have submitted a work log for 2.5 hours, you'll still get credit for the work log. It's only 5 points, but I would really be surprised if you got a very good grade on the project, because that 2.5 hours should be artist background. That would be enough to cover the artist background and taking the quiz and then writing the artist review paper for that module. That doesn't give you any project time. So, and a couple people I've made notes saying, this is a third or a quarter what the class average is. If you didn't get a very high score on the project that you turned in, go back and examine how much time you spent. Because there is a direct one-to-one correlation between time spent and the grade that you get in this class. So something to be mindful of. I'm not expecting anybody to be spending 30 or 40 hours a week on this class. But if you're only spending an hour and a half a week on this class, you're not going to be getting a very high score. So hopefully that doesn't disappoint anybody. I do need to mention that because I was teaching a drawing fundamentals class where several of the assignments are just to continue drawing for a 6-hour period. And one guy was bragging that he did everything in 45 minutes. And I thought that was pretty phenomenal, because if the assignment is to draw for 6 hours and you're able to get that 6 hours crowded into 45 minutes, you're doing something that addresses the fundamental nature of physics. So, but sadly he did not get the grade he had hoped for. Too bad. Okay, so that was one thing I wanted to talk about. the next thing I wanted to do is ask, did Melissa, Whitney, and Christina, did you guys all three see the image for the structure with skin student
No,
example?
mine wouldn't like on my Canva it wouldn't appear. Like it just comes up like a link. Like not like a link, but like the name of the image.
That is just really weird. Okay, because I'll show you, this is what my Canva, my view shows. So, and you know, I've refreshed it a dozen times and it shows, but it shows up for me. So I have no idea what is going on with you guys, but um, you know, with your interface, I would, I hope that some of you would be able to talk to tech support, and whatever they tell you, let me know so I can fix it, and I will contact them too and see what's going on. But I want to share the image with you as well, so that everybody accessing this, and we are being recorded, so everybody accessing this can actually see the image. So can you guys see this? The photo? Okay. So this is Noah Thomas. From the people who have talked to me, almost everybody said that the website worked. One person said it didn't. So I really don't know what's going on. But I wanted to talk a little bit about this and have this on our the YouTube channel, so you guys can just pause this if you need to, for everybody's watching this. But I wanted to really make it clear so that everybody can see what these student examples are of this project. There's been some confusion, and a big part of that confusion, I think, came because I tried to explain it and I did not do a very good job, and people were confused. In the actual outline of this, I used different examples for the sticks that can be used. And a couple people were concerned because they did not get popsicle sticks in their kits. I think you guys got skewers. Is that right? And that's totally fine. I've had people use a lot of different things. And as with every project, use what's in the kit and add to it. Or if it's not working for you, you know, use something else that's similar. What you need for this kit is essentially something that functions as a skin, like I'm sorry, not for the kit, for the project, something that functions as a skin, and people have used a lot of different kinds of things for that. I wanted to talk about some of the possibilities, and then you also need to use something for the structure. And I think I do say popsicle sticks right here, but you don't need to use popsicle sticks. You can use skewers like are in the kit. People have used knitting needles, which would be kind of expensive because you'd have to cut those down, and they're not free. Other people have used big toothpicks. You know those like sandwich toothpicks that you can find at Walmart that are like 4 or 5 inches long. People have also used orange sticks, which are kind of like heavier skewers, craft sticks, which are like popsicle sticks but a lot narrower. And I've had several people, a couple of people over the years have used, you know, the old wire hangers, and used wire cutters and just cut the wire hangers into pieces and use those. So they didn't bend the wire hangers, but they used wire cutters and cut the wire hangers into like 4-inch sections to use. I've also had people use origami paper. And that was, I thought, was really kind of fascinating because that person took the origami paper and they rolled it along its length diagonally. So they got these round toothpick shapes that were about 6 to 8 inches long, and they used those for their structure. That same person is, yeah, I think all of you got hot glue guns. That same person, instead of using hot glue guns, actually went through several packs of bubble gum and used the bubble gum to kind of anchor all the corners and wrap that with I think it was either yarn or a bunch of thread that they found. Really an interesting way of putting it together, but kind of gross. I don't think anybody wanted to handle their project. I think the hot glue will work really, really well. I've also had people take the masking tape and tear the, they'll pull off like an 8 or 10 inch strip and then tear it in half and use that to wrap the corners with. But if you can use the hot glue, I would recommend that. Gorilla Glue will sometimes work as well. But anyway, there's lots of different materials that you can use for the structure. And then for the skin, here it says 3x5 cards. I don't know if you guys got 3x5 cards in your kits. You do have the file folders that you could potentially use. But I think it's kind of interesting to do this with several different kinds of skin. And you can use paper. You can use cooking parchment. People have done that. That turns out looking really interesting. A few people have used the watercolor markers that they bought for another art class and use that to apply color to the cooking parchment, and then applied the cooking parchment to the structure. And that made for some interesting things because it wasn't all the same color. And they did different things where they would draw a picture on the inside or the side of the paper away from the viewer and then color the side towards the viewer. And that made for some interesting effects too. But for the skin as well, I've also had people use things that they crocheted and use that for the skin. People have also taken and wrapped some of the faces of their modules with yarn or string to do some interesting things. People have also kind of made a net out of hot glue and applied that to their structure for the skin. Other people have taken saran wrap or plastic wrap. I guess we're not supposed to tout any specific products, but using that can be kind of interesting. It's a challenge to get it to stick on, but if you have a grandparent who used to teach in school, they probably have overhead projector plastic, and you can use that. If ask first, so you don't destroy anything precious. But it's interesting to play with different ideas or different variations on opacity and transparency for the skin project as well. I wanted to talk about each of these three examples. For this project, what you're supposed to be doing is creating a module that's about the size of a baseball or an orange. Make 6 or 8 of them that are, they can either be all exactly the same or variations on a theme. And if you look at this center, can you guys see my mouse, where my mouse is? Okay. If you look at the center, here's the module, and it looks like essentially 2 tetrahedrons kind of pushed in towards each other. And the person made these with, it looks like the craft sticks rather than popsicle sticks or skewers. And it looks like to me that the person made 8 that were identical with the structure. And then for the skin, they cut 2 triangles out and applied one right here and here on each of those 8 modules. Then on 4 of them, they put them together so that we have the starting of a spiral right here. And then they turned them around and applied 4 more attaching to that same spiral going the opposite direction. Can everybody see that, how it's repeated? And then this bottom one was glued to the base to kind of counterbalance this. What I like about this is it activates the volume of space around the thing. This is a 3D class, and so we need to make sure that we activate the space around the object that we're building. I've seen people have just made a fan type object that they spread out on the ground. And that's nice for a 2D thing, but it doesn't really activate the 3-dimensional space. But do you see what I'm saying when this activates the volume around it? Is you get the spiral that's going up like an ascending staircase, and then the spiral goes up some more and ascends even further on this other side. A couple other things that I like about this is that on this bottom one, we can see the sticks, and they come in front of this bottom piece of paper, and then this top piece of paper, this top triangle, obstructs our view of the sticks behind it. And that's repeated for these 4 right here. And then the person has made a mirror of this by attaching those other 4 this way. So it hides different areas, and it goes behind the sticks in other areas. Can everybody see that? So it becomes engaging to an individual who's looking at this because some of it's hidden and some of it's not. That's important because hiding some areas and revealing others activates our monkey mind or our curiosity, and that forces an interaction of involvement on the part of the viewer. Almost everybody, and I say almost everybody because I bet, out of 64 billion people having been born since humans first appeared on the planet, or 120 billion, depending on who you talk to, there's bound to be some people that weren't curious out of all those billions. But for almost everybody, when we don't see something, we want to get around. We want to move our heads around or move the thing around and try to get a better view because suddenly it becomes interesting. And that's one of the activations we need to do as we're working on this structure with skin. So that's this center one. Now I want to go to this one on the right-hand side. For this one, the module looks to me like a trapezoid. A trapezoid is like a triangle with one of the points cut off. So it's 4 sides, but it has a wide area and a narrow area, and then 2 diagonals connecting those 2 lines. So we've got this trapezoid here and this trapezoid here, and that seems to be what the module is. So it's not a solid object, it's 2 trapezoids connected at the narrow end. And this person, because that was a relatively simple one, they made several of those modules. And I counted at one time 12 of them. It's a relatively simple module. It's not a stable structure like this person did. It's quite a bit different. And then on each of those, the person either cut out a piece of triangle-shaped piece of paper or a trapezoid-shaped piece of paper and glued that onto the sticks. And in some areas, like this bottom one, it completely covers the trapezoid. And in other areas, like right here, it covers half the trapezoid. And it's just a triangle. Can you see how they did that? They varied it each time. Can anybody see what I'm talking about? Okay. And this person, they activated the volume because the trapezoids kind of twist and turn in each module of 2 trapezoids, as well as the person was putting together. This reminds me a bit like a shedded snake skin, the way that they put it together. And you see it kind of winds around. It has several that touch the bottom, touch the tabletop, and they come up a little bit. And then the last several are made so that they go right up into the air. And I think that's really kind of interesting. I like this. I like the way they've done it because each module is not identical. And the way that they've joined them together is not consistently predictable. And I find that very interesting. And again, we can see the sticks in front of some paper areas, and we see it behind some paper areas. Like here, the sticks are in front of the paper, and here the paper hides the sticks behind it. And here it's both. There's a piece of paper right here with sticks supporting it, and you can't see what's behind it. Now, for my taste, I think that this middle one has a really good balance of both the skin and the structure. You can see both of them, and they seem to support each other. On this one on the right, the structure is really obvious, but it seems to me like the skin, there's not quite as much balance as it could be. I think it would be interesting to see more triangles of skin applied on this one. I think that would be fascinating. Now on this one, so we know what the module is here in the center. We know what the module is here on the right. What's the module on this one? On the left?
It looks like it's just a rectangle with one side being covered with cardboard.
Yeah, that's what it looks like to me. It looks like the box troll kind of house type thing, where it's just like a crate. And right here, you see just that crate shape has a rectangle of cardboard on it. And we see that repeated right here, right here, right here, right here. And then a couple of them have, it looks like a weird shape with almost a triangular bite taken out of it. Like right on this one, the shape is like this. Can you see that? Where it's not a plain rectangle? And I wonder, it looks like on this one, the person actually changed that crate shape. But what I agree with Christina completely that it looks like the basic module is that orange crate um, rectangular box. And then a few of them, they've done some interesting things to kind of change that expectation up. Now on this, it looks like this one, this one, this one, this one all have only one piece of cardboard as a piece of skin. And on several others, like this one and this one and this one, it looks like there's two pieces of cardboard. What I like about it is you have that module, and it looks to me like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 modules that are those crate shapes with some variation. And I like the variation on 3 or 4 of them. I think that's really interesting. One thing that I find that this kind of uses a little bit too much skin. And maybe it's not. Maybe it's just a view of this photo, but it looks like a lot of that skin is in between us and the structure. So we're extrapolating. We're doing a lot of extrapolation, trying to guess what the module is. I think what would be more cool is like on this one right here, to have had this cardboard on the far side, so it was acting as a support for the structure visually. And maybe on this one, having the skin on the sides away from us so we could see a little bit more of the sticks, and maybe doing that on a few of them. Do you know what I mean? Like this one, I think there's a really good balance in the center of structure and skin. And on this one on the left, it would be nice to have the skin supporting the structure a little bit more as opposed to the other way around. Does anybody see what I'm seeing on that left-hand one? Is that okay? So that's my take on that. So again, what we're doing with this is using whatever in the kit that makes sense to you and adding whatever you need to that helps you make sense of it. We're building 6 to 8 modules that are each about the size of an orange. And you can do variations or have them be exactly the same. I think as long as there's a recognizable relationship, that is just fine. And when you're doing this, it might help to refer back to, remember that first website I had you guys look at 2 months ago now? That was the polyhedra website. Maybe look at something like that and find a simple shape that you can make out of the skewers sticks that you have in the kit, and make several of those, and then set them in front of you and look at them and see where it makes sense to apply the skin. And after you do that for all 8 of them, then go and start figuring out how to stack them on each other. And I think that might be really a good way to approach this. We do have 2 samples that people have turned in, and I want to share that with you really quick. So on this one, I think that this is a really good start. And I think it can be added to a little bit to get to where we really want it to be. And I'll tell you why. But before we get into that, can anybody say what the module is? Do you guys see what the module is that they've done? It looks to me like they did go to the polyhedra site, because the module that they use, that shape, is one of the photonic solids. This right here, it's a tetrahedron. It's basically a four-sided pyramid. And it looks like they made one here, one here, one here, one here, maybe a couple others. On this one, it looks like they put paper on two sides, paper on two sides here, paper on one side on this one. And here they did paper on a full triangle side and then half of one side. And I think that that's really interesting. What I think could be done to make this more in line with the goals of the assignment is, because right now, this is all resting on the paper. But I think what could be really interesting is if they made one or two more modules and used this face that's facing us as the base, and then added that extra one or two modules wherever it made sense to kind of balance this. So this was standing up instead of just resting on the surface. Does that make sense? What I'm talking about? Because then it would really activate the volume around the structure that we're doing, and that, which is another important aspect for the project. And I think it's a really good take on it. Now this one I think is really interesting. What I like about this is that it looks like it's almost suspended, and that's really fascinating to me. The module is a little bit harder for me to find. It looks like it's basically another tetrahedron type structure, but it's a little bit more convoluted than that, which I don't mind at all. I think that that's absolutely fine. I think for this, it feels like it's not quite finished. And the reason why I say that is I really like this. I think it's looking really good. But I'd like to see on this one, maybe some more of these bamboo triangle structures, one coming out on the left, perhaps, or several of them coming out on the left and several more coming out on the right. So it fleshes it out a little bit more. And I think that it could benefit from that. And I think that this is really looking very nice. So whoever has worked on both of those, if you guys would like to add to it, like I've said, and work on it like that, I think that would be terrific. And if you want to wait until after I grade it, that's fine too. But again, are any of the grades set in stone? If you didn't get a perfect grade and I said anything at any point from now until the end of the term, you can work over it again, add to it, and resubmit it. And if I don't grade it within a week, let me know, email me, and I'll get right on it and grade it. Because I want you guys, since we don't have the benefit of meeting in person a couple times every week, I don't like the idea of having the grade be solid the first time I see something. I want you to take that as feedback so that you can work on it, resubmit it. So, and I've seen that in several of the assignments, people have done that, which I really appreciate. Like with the houses that we did at the very beginning, several people retook some of their pictures and resubmitted it, and that was great. And a couple of people even reworked their houses a bit and resubmitted, and that was great. And on the wire, a few people did the same kind of thing. And then, like I mentioned earlier, on the annotated bibliography, several people went back in, made changes, and reworked some stuff and turned it in. And they ended up with a much better product. So I really appreciate you guys doing that. All right, if we go to does anybody have any questions about the structure with skin assignment as we've talked about it, seeing this? Now, can you guys see what I'm showing? I'm trying to share the page that has the structure with skin student examples on it. Can everybody see that? Okay. So I hope this makes sense. And what I'd like is if people are turning in stuff and it just doesn't look like what I'm hoping to communicate, we'll look at everybody's stuff next week and get everybody another week to go back over it and fiddle with it. There's probably a more academic word we can use rather than fiddling, but I think that covers it pretty well. Do you guys have any questions about the structure with skin assignment? Is there anything that kind of piqued your interest or made your ears perk up as we were talking about it this time?
I liked seeing the examples. That kind of gave me a better idea of what direction we're headed.
Okay, good, because that was something I did not realize that so many people had a hard time seeing the examples. That is frustrating to me because from my end, I don't know what to do about it. So I'm glad you said something, but I did email everybody an image of that so you can see that, even if it's not showing up. And like I said, this week, I'm going to try to figure out what I can do to get that working. I did, I wanted to talk briefly about some of the artists that we have. We're probably not going to watch the videos during this time together, simply because even though I have all the permissions in place to share these videos, YouTube still will make me edit it out for whatever reason, and doesn't seem to always make a lot of sense. But David Smith is the guy that does like big sheets of steel, and I think that he's really good for one extreme of the structure with the skin kind of thing. And this guy, Richard Deacon, I love his stuff because the skin, it seems like to me, a lot of the times the skin on his is stuff that you fill in almost like the implied line that we were talking about, where you see all the structure and then your brain starts imagining the skin as the surface of all the structural elements that are facing you. And I think it's really kind of interesting. So Richard Deacon is at one end of that surface with the skin. I think David Smith is at the other. And there's some really fascinating ones. Like, there's a guy, Richard Doherty. Doherty is one of the artists that I don't have on this, but Richard Doherty has still something up in Logan. I don't know if you guys have gone to USU in Logan. Have any of you been there? What he has is he's created this kind of architectural environment that looks like it's right out of a Dr. Seuss book. He creates these things where the structure is all sticks that he bends and weaves together, and then on the outside of it, the skin becomes almost a reed mat of sticks that he just keeps lacing in and lacing in until it becomes almost solid. And it's really, and it has all these little Dr. Seuss like round windows in it and doorways and stuff like that. And um, my kids who are in their 20s now love seeing that. And then little kids that are 4 or 5 love seeing it. And the last time I was there were some octogenarians who really thought it was awesome too. And then some of the other guys that I really appreciate are Frank Gehry. There's a couple of videos of his that I want you to look at. But what I like about his stuff is he's the guy who has anybody seen Get Smart, the movie? Okay, you know where at the end of it they go to the Disney Opera House. He's the one who designed that. And what I love about his stuff is that when you first encounter it, it feels like something is sliding off the building or something is folding around the building. There's something that almost teases you into expecting that the building is changing shape, which I just think is really interesting. And then Buckminster Fuller, he's tried very hard to create buildings that depend on the same kind of cellular structures that you see in the microorganisms in ponds and things like that. His geodesic domes, of course, are very easily recognizable, and it is the only structure on the planet that actually gets stronger the bigger it is. And of course, the video I think I shared comes from the ancient of days while the Earth's crust was still cooling way back in the 80s and while he was still alive. And it shows the Epcot Center at Disney World or Disney Universe, whatever it is in Florida. And that it was a video that they produced when the Epcot Center was just being built and shown to the world. So, that's how ancient, antique this video is that I have you watching. But there's some really interesting stuff. The other thing that I like, some of the things that I like about these artists in this group is when you listen to them talk about their work, what's fascinating to me is that all of them, to some level, talk about the nature of reality and how people live together, how society manages to stick together. And Anish Kapoor, what's really fascinating to me about some of his work is you look at this, particularly Cloudgate, is that the structure is the skin for anybody else, but the skin for some of his stuff is the reflection that you see on the surface of the structure, which I think is a fascinating take on this whole idea. And then when you start talking about Frank Gehry, what Frank Gehry is really interested in is the feelings of comfort and security and togetherness that architecture can inspire. And what Buckminster Fuller really likes talking about with his work is this whole idea of world community, which I think is fascinating. More than most of the other artists that we've looked at so far, these ones in this module, you really start getting a sense at how they view their art as a tool or an artifact to connect people, which I think is really fascinating. I don't know, how many of you have seen some of the videos in that background area for that module? Any of you watch those? Did you get a sense of that as you were listening to the artists talk about their work, that they're really sharing philosophy with you instead of just artsy fartsy stuff?
Yeah, I also felt like several of them acted like they were like compelled to do the work almost, and like they were just the medium that the art came through, sort of.
Yeah, something had to be done, and the medium that they're working with is just the expression of what that had to be done. Is
Yeah,
that,
you
yeah,
expressed that better than I was. I didn't say it quite how I meant, but yes, it's like this thing needed to be created, and they're just there creating it, but it's not really theirs. It's
right, yeah.
yeah. I found that interesting that it seemed like more than one of them kind of had that same feeling.
Yeah, I found that was really interesting. And it reminds me of like Andy Goldsworthy. When you hear him talk about his work, it's it's not quite the same thing, but the artwork that he's producing, that he's photographing, is not what he considers the artwork. The artwork is exploring this realm of the ephemeral, the stuff that's going to pass in moments of time. And the photos that he makes are just whatever the medium happens to be around him when he's sharing that moment with you. And which is really kind of fascinating because like you Honors Kapoor is really good at addressing this idea of something was bursting out and it just happened to be through that the language of that medium, whatever it was. Like when he did his color, or when he did the cloud gate, or when he does any of the things. I think another really good one that talks about that is Ai Weiwei. When he if you can find uh, one of the YouTube videos that he did about his work the first time he was allowed back in China. What is amazing, he will talk about doing these things, and it just happens to be the material that he came across when whatever it was burst out. And I think it's in. I was talking to Brian Kershiznik a while back, and there's a video that he did. There's BYU TV does a thing on artists, and they interviewed Brian Kershiznik, and one of the how he describes it is something ruptures, and the painting is the record of the rupture, which I think that's really a fascinating way of looking at it. Yeah, but I liked how each of those artists in this particular module have express themselves as almost being conduits for the energy expression as opposed to an artist working in a particular medium. That's really fascinating to me. So with the quiz, do you think it would be beneficial at all to look at the quiz again? Did you guys all do the quiz? Because one of the things that is showing up to me is that I wanted to address um, delineated forms, negative space, and a couple other things really briefly. So we're not going to go through the whole quiz like we did last time that wasn't recorded. We'll just touch on a couple highlights. And I wanted to reiterate, have you guys tried taking a quiz without the text and then doing it again with the text, or have you guys just done it with the text?
I just took it once. I did reference the text on
Okay.
one or two questions.
That's good because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to, it's open book. You're supposed to have the textbook in front of you. A couple people were trying to find answers online because they didn't want to get the text or the text hadn't come, one thing or another. We have spoken with the on-campus library. I think it's the Fuller Library, and they do have about a half dozen copies of the book there. So if you can get on campus, that's a good way to do it. Three of you mentioned to me that the archive site that I was sending people to just lost a lawsuit about copyright infringement. And so it looks like you can't access it there. But then I did send out an email. Two other people found additional access points to the text. it will save you a lot of time and you'll get much better score if you take the quiz with the textbook. Because like I said, there are a couple ringer questions and you need to have the textbook. So on this, part of the quiz is actually watching this video, but this is all about delineated forms. And delineated forms are the areas where there isn't necessarily a drawn outline, but your brain manufactures an outline for the shape or the form. And on this, keeping that in mind, there are two really big, obvious delineated forms. There's several others, but there's two really obvious repeated delineated forms. Does anybody want to take a stab at what those two are and describe them?
The space created in between the rungs of the ladder and the circle created in the center of the shape.
Yeah, that's exactly right. These are the delineated forms. So areas between the rungs of the ladder and then the two rings. Yeah, that's exactly right. So there isn't a shape there that you can pull off and take away, and there's no drawn outline, but those are the two delineated forms. That's exactly right. And right here, if we look at this is the Henry Moore figure. This one we talked about negative space, and negative space is exactly what it is. I mean, it is the space that is everywhere that's not the actual sculpture. And on here, we can also see, because of the negative space, several other delineated forms as well. And I'd say one delineated form is going to be this head shape, with the notch cut out. And the reason why that becomes a delineated form is because of the negative space around the white sculpture. So negative space is this area under the arm here, the area under the arm here, the area under this foot and calf and knee kind of shape. But it's also, the negative space is also going to be the area behind the sculpture that the other parts of this part of the sculpture fills in. And you can kind of see that negative form being outlined by just a reflection on the edge of this piece. Does that make sense visually to you guys? Okay. Because every 2D artist understands this intuitively, immediately. And when you're going into 3D and you come from a 2D background, I think a lot of people expect that there's a trick to it when you're dealing with 3D. And it's not. It's the same thing you guys are very comfortable with and familiar with already. I think that the big difference is we all know what an implied line is. It's that line that your brain kind of fills in with when you because the object in the material is looking at somebody, or somebody's pointing, or you see a line that starts and stops, or two fields come together. Like on this, one of the implied lines is just the shadow created right here, where these two fields come together, where you have this front surface plane and then the undersurface plane. You can kind of see this implied line creating. Now, Henry Moore did not draw that line in, but we're seeing it because these fields are coming together, or these planes or surfaces are coming together. And then when we go back up here, the delineated forms are generated because of the implied lines that are created. And sometimes these aren't implied lines. They're very obvious lines, but they're obvious lines that are created by the sculpture itself, not by somebody drawing on it. And I think that those are the things that are can be confusing to some people. And here we talked about how each of these three different images, each of these three sculptures activate space in different ways. And this one, because the artist is engaging you in a conversation because it's a recognizable human form that's reaching out to you. This one, it activates the space around it because it feels like it's leaning over, and you want to be involved with, stabilizing it somehow. And on this one, it's being activated because it seems to be disappearing into the space around it, or it seems to be exploding, or it seems to parts of it almost seem to be piercing the space around it. So for this one, question 6, each of the 3 can be used to give the answer. You just need to be able to articulate a little bit about what that answer is. Now, are there any, like the scale? I think we talked about the scale. A girl, this is monumental, and it really can be intimidating to people. Man on a Bench by Dwayne Hanson. He's really good at creating very realistic forms, and people will actually complain about how rude the person is because they're not responding to them. But it's a very approachable scale. And the scale really makes us kind of focus in and pay a lot of attention. Like when you're in a classroom and somebody's next to you is whispering, you have a tendency to focus in because you have to. There's not an awful lot there. And Slinkichu does the same thing with physical scale. So I think that's really interesting. And I love this question: which is more important, the surface or the skin? Both of them can be important, but whichever of those you pick, and articulate why. And several people have said both are important, and I think that's valid too. But does anybody have any questions about the quiz? Or does it seem to make sense with what you were looking at? Okay, good. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about is the applying the tools of artistic critique assignment. And I'm going to share my screen really quick with this. We've talked about it a couple times. I just wanted to remind people about this. The tools of artistic critique, I want to talk about what those are really briefly, but then remind everybody that there's 2 assignments for this. One is a 3 to 5 minute critique of one of your own pieces of work. And then the second was a 3 to 5 minute critique of somebody else's work. And Allison did this on a critique of one of the wire pieces. And before we listen to how she did that, I wanted to briefly talk about what the 4 tools are of the artistic critique. And again, it's not to tell somebody how they could do better, but it is just a model that we can use to structure our focus onto something. And the first tool is describe, where we talk about how this thing engages the world around it. And that's where we start talking about the length, the width, the material, what kind of colors are involved, what kind of style there is. What's the second tool of artistic critique after you describe it?
Analyze, I think.
Right, exactly. And what are you doing when you analyze?
You start to kind of explore what they did and what materials they might have used, how they created the techniques they're using.
Right, exactly. And the really important part, or one of the important parts about the analyze, is in that process that Christina just described, we're engaging ourselves in kind of imagining this artist in the process of making whatever it is that they're making. It is the first kind of almost interactive dialogue that we're having with the artist. Now, of course, we're most often we're not going to have an opportunity to talk directly with the artist, But by imagining how they made something and the processes that they used, it does start to open up the door to potential insights we might have into how they were thinking. So what's the third step? After we analyze it, what's the third step?
Interpret.
Right. And what are we doing when we're starting the interpreting?
Exploring what the intent may have been, what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, exactly. And this engages more of our imagination. And we're kind of almost generating an avatar of who the artist is, because from the thing that's in front of us, we're trying to guess why they did that, and maybe what their attitudes are some of them, at least as we can see. Now, again, we're not talking to the artist directly, but it is astounding how much of a person, intentionally or unintentionally, comes through in the work that they produce. And we can see that in a lot of people's work. Like Anish Kapoor in his Cloud Gate, it seems pretty apparent that he has issues with OCD. I mean that's you don't get a form like that's highly polished without spending some serious time on it. And Jeff Koons is another one. We look at his stainless steel balloon animals. I think it's pretty much apparent that he has a sense of humor. I mean, that's from his aluminum Play-Doh stand all the way to his Michael Jackson ceramics. The guy has a bit of a self-deferential or self-detrimental sense of humor. He makes fun of himself a lot, and he makes fun of society a lot. Not in a point at and a laugh so much, but more from a perspective of we can't take ourselves too seriously. And that speaks a lot to the interpretive process. And then what's the fourth step of the tools of artistic critique? What's the fourth tool?
Evaluate your judgment.
Right. And in that one, we're basically asking and evaluating the question, is it successful? Did it do its job? Did it meet the parameters of the assignment? Is it an object that I would enjoy? Does it look like the artist was able to communicate something with intent, with purpose? And I think that this one is the most personal out of each of the four steps, because we're relying almost entirely on our imagination from the things we extrapolated going through all the other steps. So let's listen to what Allison has to say about this. Now, I don't have a file that I've put in our playlist yet. I'm going to have to figure out how to put this into our playlist, but you should see that pretty soon. So let's go ahead and listen to what Allison has to say.
This artwork is titled Light Bulb and was created by Allison Wilkinson. It was created in September 2024 and made entirely out of wire. It seems to be made a bit abstract, with the use of wire to create a sense of a line drawing made out of ink instead of what it actually is, which is a sculpture. There is only one color used for this sculpture with the black wire, and there is both jagged and smooth line quality used here. The first thing that I noticed about this piece is the movement that the line art creates with the cord coming out of the light bulb. My eye was immediately drawn to this part of the work. The overall effect of the work is a bit anxious with the type of line quality that was chosen. Only using black wire helps to create unity throughout the piece. The volume, especially in the center of the light bulb, creates emphasis and a focal point. Like mentioned before, the movement of the cord also helps to create emphasis with this work to draw the eye in. The volumetric aspect of this work allows for this artwork to take on that three-dimensional structure. Also, looking at the different lines shown, the straight and jagged lines help to create contrast in this work in order to demonstrate the different parts of the work. This is a formal piece that quite literally is titled Light Bulb and is a light bulb. A light bulb represents ideas, and the artist has used what they know about a light bulb being round and taken a different approach to create a more static feel to it with the use of jagged lines. The bulb of the light bulb has those jagged lines instead of that smooth surface like we're used to. This approach shows that some ideas in life can turn out different than you expect. This work was created for an assignment for the 3D design class to showcase full metric form through a wire sculpture. The artist can see the opposition to ordinary things in life and see different meanings within it. This piece relates to me in that I created it and like to look at both sides of things. Whether that is a situation in life or seeing both sides to a different object, I've always been open-minded to different possibilities with things. While talking about this light bulb piece, I feel like I have a better understanding of my own work and identifying different parts of it. I feel like I can see the value of it more and see how the different line quality you use can convey an object in a different way than you would normally see it. This work communicates the idea of a light bulb using the wire and still looking like a line ink drawing. For others, it communicates that belief that everyday objects, everyday situations can have multiple sides to it. Just like how an idea might seem like a good idea, it can also turn out not as great. Thank you.
All right, what did you guys think about that?
I thought she did a good job. I've been kind of worried about that assignment because I know I sound like an idiot, but I thought she did well.
One thing that I really appreciated was I could see as she went through each of the steps. You know, and I could hear when she went through each of the steps, describing, talking about how it was made, um, talking about what it potentially could mean, and then evaluating at the end. A couple of things that I really appreciated was that Allison worked very hard to separate herself from the actual object, you know, being the maker of the object, which I thought was really well done. The only time she really talks about creating it is towards the end. That is very hard to do, but when you're able to do it, it really makes the critique a lot better. Because all of us have a tendency, we're artists, we can't help it. We have a tendency to beat ourselves up. And if you can avoid that, then hopefully by the end of it, you realize, well, actually, this doesn't suck nearly as bad as I expected. But I think she did a really good job separating herself from that and was able to share some really good insights, potentially because she separated herself from it. I really appreciate the precision that was used in describing. And when she talked about making it, I liked that she tried to keep as much as possible, and I thought she did a really good job. When she talked about how it was made, she did it from an observer's point of view instead of, I don't think once she said, I did this or I did that, you know, when she did the analysis part, which is again, very hard to do. The other thing that I really, really like about this is that it is 3 minutes long. That's perfect. I say 3 to 5 minutes. 3 minutes is ideal. You can go a little bit longer, and I've had people do up to 5 minutes. But the reason why I stop it there is I did have one person do this for 33 minutes. Yeah, Christina, your face is exactly what my face did. I mean, it was after she sat down, we made the rule that if you go over 10 minutes, you get an automatic fail. You know, but that was, holy cow. And this is not,
Did you watch till the end?
no, it was in person.
Oh, it was in person.
Yeah,
Gosh,
it was,
that's bold. Wow.
it was awful. It was terrible. And these critiques are not like lasagna. When you make extra, you can give it to your neighbors. This is not the way it works with the video. If you do extra, edit it down, please. One of the other things that Allison did that I really appreciate is I have social anxiety. My kids have social anxiety. It's very difficult. I had to develop a set of tools. I'm on the spectrum, so I had to develop a set of tools so that when I make a presentation, when I talk to people, because I hate talking to people, um, there are certain things that I have to do so that it doesn't look like I hate talking to people. And that's something that all my kids have managed to do as well. Some of those are scripting. And I've had several people in classes that cannot handle, even when they're only speaking to themselves and recording, the moment that they know that they're recording, they can't do it. What Allison did is she wrote the whole script out and she just read the whole thing. And that's perfect. That's exactly one of the best ways to do it. If the sound of your own voice is problematic, write the script out and have somebody else record it. I have had people do that all the time. I mean, I've had a guy with a deep voice script it all out, and he had his wife read it, who has a very tiny voice, which I thought was since he was on some of the live calls, it was a little bit disconcerting, but that's totally fine. And I've also had several women in the class have, like, one had her dad, who's like a retired motorcycle club member with a very deep, raspy voice, do it. That was a little bit interesting, and that's fine. It doesn't matter. The thing that matters is that the script was written out. It was a really solid critique, and then it was recorded to an image of the object. And how this person did it, how Allison did it, was exactly right too. Having just a static image, we never saw her face, we never saw her at all, and that was perfect. So I think it shows a lot of chutzpah being the first one, and she does get extra credit. Everybody's going to get extra credit all the way through October doing this. So please do it as soon as you can and get it out of the way. All right, excellent. So that's all that I wanted to cover today. And I'm just super excited that it looks like everything is being recorded, which is just a thrill. And I will try get, as soon as I can, get Allison's video onto our playlist so everybody can see that for the class. And I think before that, after we get done tonight, I'll get permission as soon as I can to share that link with everybody too. So even if I don't get it onto the playlist, I'll try to email it. I'll see if I can get it emailed to everybody so all of you can watch it. But so that's all I have to cover. Does anybody have any questions about any of the material that we covered, or any questions about stuff coming up? Now, all of you have done the artist research stuff, the annotated bibliography. Is that right? And Melissa, you too? Okay. Have any of you, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. That's why I was quiet. Have any of you got it perfect the first time, or have you just reworked it and turned it back in?
I forgot to add the date that I accessed the sources. So I need to go in and revise that and turn it back in again.
Okay, because I think that those are the two most common problems: forgetting the access dates and then the alphabetizing the each of the annotation or each of the citations. So that's and then the third most common one was not having two paragraphs. There needed to be a summary and a reflection paragraph for each of those. And I think as soon what I'm seeing is that sometimes within a day, when I make that note, I get it resubmitted, and so I can go back in and change the grade. So I really appreciate that. All right, well, great. If nobody has any questions, then that is it for this week. And next week we're going to look at what people have turned in, talk about them, see what, and then talk about what the next project is as well. How are people doing going through the class? Is this? I know it's kind of odd taking an art class online, but it seems to be working out for a lot of people. Is that what your guys' read is, that it is working out? Are things working? Okay, good. And I think I want everybody to be very comfortable with the idea that once you get your grade, it's not final. You can make changes and then resubmit, because you do that with your other art classes. You should be able to do that with this one too. And many people have been taking advantage of that. So that's excellent to see. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me this week. I hope you guys have an absolutely wonderful week and weekend. And I look forward to seeing everybody next Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.